My name is Liana Shatova. I'm Senior Partner Success Manager with Gurtam North America, a leading global GPS tracking software provider. I've been with the company for about 2 years, and I work mainly with our partners in North America. Every day I talk to my partners, help them address their questions, and advise on their projects. They, in turn, share their knowledge of industry and outside-the-box approach to handle their business. Our partners are the first source of information about the emerging trends and new products. It is our partners and their business cases that inspired us to create this podcast. So I'd like to welcome you to our podcast, the Gurtam Podcast. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you are healthy and safe. Thank you for joining us today. Today's episode of our podcast is about COVID-19 crisis management, reflections, and reactions. Now that the first wave of shock and confusion passed, and businesses all over the world are trying to adjust to a new normal, my guest and I will try to analyze the first response of businesses, including the telematics industry, to the so-called corona crisis and the strategy of operating in this unprecedented situation. You might know my guest as the head of sales of Gurtam Latam. However, he has recently transitioned to a new role, Vice President of International Strategy. Please welcome Esteban Hunt and congratulations. Hi, Esteban.
Hi, Liana. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much. How are you? How are things at home in Argentina?
I really can't complain. I'm fortunate enough to be healthy and my family is healthy, so that's the most important thing. In Argentina, things are not great, but they're not that bad either. We're having a strict lockdown, and that's been going on since March the 20th. So it's been a little more than 2 months. And we're still going to be on this strict lockdown until June the 8th. So we've had to be patient about this. We've had to learn self-discipline. But overall, I really can't complain. I'm in a very good place. So I'm happy. I'm happy about how things are progressing.
Well, that is great to know that you and your family are safe and healthy, and I hope that the rest of the team in Argentina and Latin America are doing fine. We are also here in the United States on the lockdown, but states started recently reopening in phases, so hopefully we will get some freedom soon. Esteban, before we jump into the questions related to our topic today, I would like to give an overview of the current global situation with COVID-19 and, the most impacted regions. At the time of the recording of the podcast, globally, we have over 5 million cases of coronavirus with about 7% of deaths and 40% of recovered patients. The most affected areas are the United States, Russia, Spain, Brazil. Analysts all over the world are trying now to estimate the possible impact on the global economy. However, it's too early to say about the projections. As we know that according to Market Watch, as of mid of May, there is a projection of $82 trillion of potential global impact over a 5-year span. According to Business Insider, 500 million people are at risk of falling into poverty from the outbreak around the world. World output is expected to slump 3%. And according to IHS Market, it expects the world economy to shrink by 5.5% this year. America's first quarter GDP, the most expensive measurement of the United States economy, fell at 4.8 annualized rate. So, of course, it's too early to estimate the impact of the global economy on the global economy as well as on the global telematics market. However, there is some data available about the related automotive industry. Worldwide vehicle production is projected to be down by 20% in 2020. In North America, production remains shattered at least through April. China expects to limit the decline in new vehicle sales for 2020 to 12%. Vehicle sales in both Europe and North America are predicted to bottom out in April and May. Esteban, what do you think about those statistics?
They're really staggering figures. When you try to understand the impact of this whole crisis in numbers, the numbers are frightening. For sure, every number that you have shared is very concerning. But I think that even with these numbers, it's really hard to grasp how important this is throughout the world and throughout history, actually. If we compare it to other types of pandemics or crises, we'd have to go a century back to look at something that really had this kind of impact in the economy and the lives of people. It's really something that is unprecedented. And I think that we will always remember this year. I think that it's going to be not just something that is going to be present in our minds because of all the lockdowns and all the difficulties, but it's also going to be a great learning experience because in one way or another, this has affected absolutely everyone. And in one way or another, we're going to all have to face challenges to survive this crisis, to make it through, and to become stronger after this.
Thank you for this positive outlook. Definitely learning experience for all of us. Well, we're obviously not economists to discuss the long and short-term impact of the pandemic, but Esteban, if we go back to the start of the global pandemic in December 2019, January 2020, when only China was put on the lockdown and no one could foresee the global spread of the virus so fast, do you think that there could be some measures, and could the companies have done something different? Could they have had some plan to address the unprecedented crisis like this?
That's an interesting question, Liana. I think that I would try to divide the companies into two sectors, the private sector company and the public sector companies or entities. In terms of the private sector, I guess that it depends a lot in which type of industry your company works on. But for example, if you were working probably on a healthcare related industry, you would probably have a better understanding of what a breakout of a virus in China could imply and how it could potentially have a larger impact. So for those kinds of companies, for sure, I would think that they were better prepared than the rest of us who don't have enough or as much knowledge of the potential impact of how a pandemic works and of how these dynamics could affect us. So I don't think that the private sector in general would be or could have been better prepared or much better prepared. I do think that the public sector really in many countries dropped the ball and could have been much better prepared. And on the private sector, there is also at least a minimum type of learning, which is it's very hard to account for every scenario. It's very hard to plan for every black swan, but maybe you could have just one contingency plan that should be for whatever black swan decides to walk through that door, right? You never know what the next catastrophe is going to look like, but you know that catastrophes can happen. And maybe that's what we should plan for in the private sector. Maybe we should plan for having some more liquidity or some more financial assets to be able to withstand the difficulties when they come, the difficult times when they come. So yeah, I think that some things could have been done and could be done, but in general, I see that the guys that really dropped the ball here are the more on the public sector than on the private sector. That's my opinion.
You mentioned for private sector companies some sort of financial contingency plan, right? Um, uh, when we're talking about our partners, right? Partners in the telematics industry, they are private sector. Do you think that your recommendation to have some sort of financial plan can apply to them? And what else would you recommend for them to have to get ready for any type of natural disaster?
Well, that's a good question. If we have to apply it to our sector, I would say one of the things that I think that is key, and I don't know how many people really think about this, are insurances. You're working in an industry where bad things happen. Cargo gets stolen. Um, Vehicles have accidents, and things that should not happen actually happen. So we should be prepared to face these accidents, these unforeseen events, and try to have some sort of insurance policy to protect ourselves in the event of these catastrophes happening. And that is not just applied to pandemics or extreme cases like volcanoes or crazy things like that, that do happen actually. And we're in that situation because those crazy things that nobody thinks will ever happen actually do happen. But I think that there's even a lack of insight into what are the other threats that our industry faces on a more daily basis and that we should also be prepared for. And I think that one of the way companies could be prepared better for these types of unprecedented scenarios is having insurance policies that are broad and that cover these events that could happen.
Well, that's a great insight actually about insurance, about their business being insured. Now let's talk about the initial reaction and requests of our partners. I remember that the first wave of quarantine hit Europe in February, the States in March, and Russia in April. So do you recall the first reaction and first requests made by our partners in your region in Latin America, in other regions, Europe, Russia? I can share my experience. I remember that the first week in mid-March was kind of slow when the first week of quarantine in mid-March was kind of slow for our partners because first of all the quarantine was not introduced in all the states at the same time. Some partners shared that it was business as usual for them. Some partners said that they had still installations schedule. So do you remember the reaction of our partners from all over the globe? Can you share this, please?
Yeah, I remember that at first there was no reaction. That's the funny part. The first initial things was just news about this spread of an epidemic at that point, and the fear or the thought that this could potentially develop into a pandemic. But at that point, it was very uncertain. And the first reactions were no reactions. And then suddenly some people started thinking how this could impact their businesses. And I think that the first important clue that gave us the suspicion that this could be a little larger was when they canceled a very important trade show in Barcelona that we were actually going to attend. And that was when it hit many of our partners. Hey, this is serious because trade shows are getting canceled and we could see this hitting our business. And at that time was when we heard the first few inquiries, and the first few questions were actually, what's going to happen with the trade shows that you have in other places, right? And we had some trade shows set up for Latin America and some other places. The first few reactions was, okay, are we still going to have that trade show? Are you still going to have your conference? What's going on with that? They still weren't thinking about the business. And it only hit them when the government started imposing the quarantines, the lockdowns, the measures to try to stop this. And that's when some of them started realizing, okay, this is going to have an impact in my business. And I think that the understanding of how this was going to impact their business evolved with time, and it still is evolving. It still is evolving because at the very beginning, some people thought, okay, this is just going to be like a 2-week lockdown. After those 2 weeks, we will still be able to do business as usual and everything's going to be fine. Then when we were past the first week, some people understood, okay, it's probably not going to be 2 weeks, probably going to be more like 1 month, or maybe a little longer. And now it's been, I don't know, 2 or 3 months, and we still are not sure when things are going to resume to the actual level of activity, if they are going to get back to the normal level of activity that we saw before anytime soon. So the understanding of the situation has been gradual, and I think it's not only our partners, but it's also been governments, it's been healthcare systems, and every other industry that has been trying to digest the impact that this is going to have and how to react. And we're still learning about how this is going to impact our lives moving forward. And so the reactions have been widespread and very different throughout time, from asking for discounts, help with their payments and things like that, to seeing the opportunities that arose from this from this situation. Many of them at the very beginning were scared, and now we see many of them actually capturing business opportunities that were not there before and that came up because of this huge situation. Many companies have been looking harder at their cost structures, where they could become more efficient, how to cut costs, how to be more profitable. And with those cutting costs opportunities, some new opportunities arose for our partners. So it's still, I would say, an understanding that we're still going through, that we're still learning, that we still have to continue digesting. But the interesting part is that we haven't stopped learning from this, and we still don't have the full answer. But our understanding of the situation has improved a lot, and not just our understanding. I think that our response to this situation has improved a lot. So it's not Gurtam only, it's the wonderful group of partners that we have, the community of partners that we have, that has been very active, sharing ideas, sharing cases, sharing experiences, and through that collective sharing of information, a lot of opportunities have been harnessed and used. So that's wonderful.
I definitely agree with what you just mentioned. And, at first we were also in denial that it's going to, take a lot of time. And then I just remember my team's response. It was just we started calling everyone, pretty much every partner, and ask how they were, just to let them know that we were there for them and we're here for them still. And no one actually knew what to expect. And communication was really key for us. And while we were calling, the new concept of Gurtam meetups came up, right? And we started talking to partners from all over the world, sharing information, sharing insights, sharing the projections, as well as some of the partners actually, saw some opportunities. You're right, and launched some of the great projects. So that's for sure. Thank you, Esteban, for your opinion here. So now I'd like to ask you about COVID-19 crisis management measures that local governments introduced, as well as Gurtam offered to the partners. So can you share some local governments' responses from all over the world? Maybe my colleagues from Europe shared some, incentives that European governments offered. It will be interesting to know.
I think that every government or most governments have tried to step up in a way to really try to make the impact of this crisis as manageable as possible. But if I had to categorize their response, there are three main categories into which you can see the types of response that governments have had. One would be immediate fiscal impulse. That is all the additional government spending that governments have introduced to try to stop or at least alleviate the stopping of the economy and the impact of the lockdowns and quarantines. So that's the first thing, a very Keynesian measure. It's additional government spending, and in some cases it's also tax cancellation, which has overall the same effect. If you're withholding taxes, if you're not paying those taxes, well, the net effect is that you have more money in your pocket. So that's what many governments have done. In the US, it's been a huge package. The European Union has also been working country by country. Many of the European countries have introduced measures like this. But there's also been a second category, that is the deferrals. So many other countries have chosen maybe not to cancel the taxes altogether, but to give deferrals and to say, okay, you don't have to pay these taxes now. You can pay them in a month, in 2 months, in 3 months. And they have been quite lenient with that to help the factors of the economy be more productive, to inject more money into the whole economy. And the third thing that has been done is other types of liquidity guarantees or provisions that have been done through other credit entities. So for example, other types of banks have been encouraged or helped by central banks to allow extra lines of credits for to stimulate production, to stimulate industry, to stimulate investment in some segments or in the most affected areas of the economy to make it suffer less. So these are the three main categories, and depending on each country by country, they have chosen different recipes, some mixing all of those, some choosing one over the other, but all of them have tried to do something about it. So governments are doing, I would say, at least a good job in trying to respond to this situation with measures that can help alleviate the economic situation.
Thank you for providing this sort of synopsis of government measures from all over the world. I totally agree. In this case, our government, the government of the United States, they prefer the first option that you mentioned, immediate fiscal impulse. So our partners applied for SBA loans, payment paycheck protection program, as well as the second round of financing. And as far as I know, all of them got the loan and now have some funds means available. What about the the measures and help that our company, Gurtam, offer to our partners to support them all over the world. Can you please share your opinion about that?
Well, the first thing that we done was to offer a measure that is really, I think, that the most effective one, which was to allow every partner throughout the world to have access to a module or a functionality that we call deactivation of units. This was initially thought to be used for another type of situation where some partners had seasonal units that were only used in certain seasons. For example, agricultural machinery that was just used during the harvest season, or some other types of very highly seasonal units. So what this functionality allows is that whatever units you have deactivated through this module, you don't have to pay for them. And the truth is, we didn't envision using it for these purposes, but when this happened, when we saw this outbreak, we were very quick to decide and to make a decision to make this available to all of our partners and to advertise this actively so that they knew that this was available, which is, you shouldn't pay for units that you're not getting paid for, right? We think that it would be unfair to be charging for units that our partners are not being able to get any revenue on. Besides that, we have also added some efforts on our side to provide more ideas, to provide more cases, and to provide more information on what could be done to take advantage of the opportunities that this crisis brought. So another thing that we did was launch an app called Distance Tag. And Distance Tag is actually an app that is perfectly thought to help with cases of quarantine prevention and quarantine tracking. And so we are also not just providing some financial aid in the terms of deactivation of units, but we're also providing tools for our partners to be able to get more revenue, to be able to get more business, because that's also something that could definitely help them. So basically, these two things that we have offered work on two different levels. The first one helps to minimize costs and to prevent paying for things that you're not using and that are not providing you any value. The second one is to help partners get more value, get more income. Apart from this, we have also been working, as I said before, with giving webinars and giving more tools and preparing, and we're having these series of meetups that happen on a weekly basis to help our partners develop new ideas of how to do business in this new environment. And we're also trying to provide all this information on cases and how to be able to really extract more value of the current situation so that they can really continue doing business in this new scenario, in this new world that we're living on. But one of the things that we always like to stress and that are really important, and that I know that not many partners have fully understood or are fully comfortable with, is the thing that we think that every unit that is being used is a unit that should be paid for. So if you as a partner are not being able to use all your units, then you should deactivate those that you're not using, because you shouldn't be paying for something that you're not using. However, if you're providing a service and your end user is using that service, don't give it away for free. I know it's a tough situation. I know things are tight, but still, you shouldn't be giving something for free, because you are working to offer that service. You are working to put that tracking device on that unit, to make it report, to pay for the SIM card, to pay for the platform and for your own structure. So there is an effort there. There is an effort. And whoever is making an effort deserves to get paid. So we believe that every unit that is actually being used is a unit that should be paid for. And don't let your end customers take you in, because things are tight, that's true, but it's not that absolutely everything has completely stopped. It's not come to a complete halt. And if we just give away discounts or free service for everyone because things are tough, we're just doing charity. And you should do charity with the people that really need charity and with the ones that are most in need. And I hardly doubt that those are the end users that are using their service. Because if they're using the service, if they're moving those units, it's because they have an expectation of getting paid. Maybe not in the same terms that they initially did. Maybe later, maybe a bit less, but they're probably going to get paid. So you should get paid for your service too.
Thank you very much for those recommendations. Definitely, wise financial management should be always in place. Now, I would like to talk about positive things or silver linings in this situation. As we know, opportunity lies in every crisis. So I have a couple of questions. So before I'm going to jump into some opportunities for our partners. So Esteban, can you please share what were positive things for you in this situation? Maybe you took up some online classes, learned a new programming language, learned how to cook. So any new skills that you would like to share with us?
Well, yeah, there's a silver lining. Unfortunately, I would say I didn't have as much downtime as many other people seem to have had. I seem to have had a lot more work than many other people, because to me the daily routine didn't change all that much. Of course, I'm not going to the office, I'm working from home, but I would say that probably my working hours stayed the same or maybe even increased. So it's not that I was able to make huge breakthroughs in my life, but there were some small efficiencies that I gained not having to commute to work. That was something that added some time to my everyday life. And yeah, silver linings. Well, one of the silver linings is not so much on the skills that I was able to develop, which I hardly can say anything. I've been trying to learn Russian, but that's such a hard language. I have to say, Liana, I don't know
That's true.
how you speak, and it's with all the 7 cases, accusative, genitive, and all of those crazy things.
Spoiler alert for those who want to
yeah, spoiler alert,
speak Russian.
It's tough. It's really tough. But regardless, it's not so much about the skills, it's more about the perspective on life and what are the important things in life. And when you've been in lockdown, in a strict lockdown like the one we have here in Argentina for this amount of time, you start realizing what are the things that you really miss the most. And in my case, the things that I really miss the most are not the things that you usually crave for, or the things that you would say, oh yeah, I want to have a great job, to get a great salary, to be able to buy these things or have these trips or all these amazing and beautiful experiences. It's more about the everyday things that I miss. It's more about being able to see my parents and hug them, or be with my friends and my siblings, my nieces, my nephews, and sharing time with them and being with them. And that's really quite inexpensive for most people. They're just so close. And with all the tools that we have, even with the video conferencing tools and the phone calls and everything, you still miss human contact. You still miss a hug. You still miss being in the same room with someone and being able to see their faces and smile and have a laugh. And that is free. That is free for all of us. It's just a question of reaching out to those people, trying to make time in your life to be with them. And I think that we should all try to value that more and find the time to meet with these important people and dedicate time to them, spend time to them. That's my most important silver lining. It's not something that I was able to develop, but more something that I was able to realize.
That's absolutely true, and it always applies. It also applies to me. Having this ability to hug someone like my parents, I've not seen them for quite a while, is a great opportunity, and I haven't appreciated that before. So now, do you think that there are any business or non-business related opportunities for our partners in this pandemic time?
Yes, definitely. During the pandemic, there's been a huge shift in the ways people, in people's consumption habits, and there are lots of opportunities by social distancing and also by the fear that this whole pandemic has brought about. So I think that consumption patterns that have shifted are probably going to continue that way for some time. It's not going to go away overnight. So just because the lockdown are more flexible now, it doesn't mean that everyone's going to rush back to restaurants. Many people are going to continue ordering from home. Many people are going to continue getting takeaway or those types of options. So the huge shift in the way people in people's consumption, in their habits, it's probably some of it is going to remain. And we have seen a huge spike, a huge increase in the demand for logistics solutions and for the improvement of the use of the vehicles that are dedicated to deliveries and that kind of services. And the reason is you can't increase the fleet so quickly. You can't just buy 50% more vehicles to attend a spike in the demand of 50% or even more from one day to another. And that's the numbers that we've been seeing, or even higher. So there's been a huge spike in the demand for these delivery vehicles and for the efficiency. But usually many of these used to be quite inefficient because there wasn't such a need for efficiency. But now that there is a larger demand, you need to be able to satisfy that demand with the resources you already have. Maybe you can increase the size of the fleet in 1, 2, 3 trucks or whatever, but it won't be as much as the spike in the demand. So many countries, many companies in these areas are desperate to find solutions that will help them improve their efficiency. And all of our product, services, functionality are related to that, and they can help with that. So those are niches that are beautiful at these times. They are beautiful to explore. They are very, very interesting. And I would suggest that you do not approach that type of sales just knocking on the door and saying, hey, I have a GPS tracking solution for you, or I offer tracking services, because they're not going to be interested in that. They're interested in the people that can bring solutions to their problems. And right now, the problem is efficiency. How can I be more productive with the resources that I already have? So you have to be smart in the way that you portray your services and become more of a consultant and understand what are the challenges, understand how their operation looks like, and use all the tools that that Wheelon and logistics and all the tools we give you have to be able to find ways to improve their efficiency, to make them more productive, to make them more profitable. And they're going to love that. They're going to love that. So that's one of the sectors of the economies that are in high demand right now and that need efficiency. There are other things that can be done. Every other country is interested in quarantine tracking solutions, and we've already talked about distance tag, so I'm not going to go deeper into that, but that's a good idea to explore, to understand how it works, and to see if it could be exploited. And there are even simpler things. So WeAttack can also be a good solution for that. And even personal trackers can also offer an alternative solution for that. So there are a number of things that have already been invented that are already there and that can be exploited in this situation, in this pandemic, and in this context. Finally, I would say there's a lot that is going to start recovering, but the level of activity as it starts to recover, there's still going to be a lot of stress on the costs. There is right now, and it's going to continue to be there for some time. So any company that knocks on the door of a large fleet owner and tells them, hey, you know what, I can help you lower your operation costs, is going to be welcome. So that's the golden ticket right now. That's where we have to focus. That's where we have to pay attention. It's not GPS tracking solution. We're not offering tracking services. That is not the way to win in this market. The way to win is to offer services that allow companies to be more profitable, because right now, everyone's struggling with profitability. So if you talk about how to help these guys reduce their costs, be more efficient, those are the things that they are going to be interested in. Those are the things that they will pay attention to. And that's the way that you can get many new units to your service. That's the way you can increase the size of your business right now. And those are the strategies that I see that are going to be the real opportunities that come out, that are happening right now, and that are going to continue to exist for some time in the near future.
Esteban, thank you for this fruitful conversation. Now I'd like to ask you to summarize the key takeaways for our partners and for our audience that we have discussed today.
Thanks, Liana. I would say that the most important things are, first and foremost, you may not be able to foresee what the next crisis is going to be about, but that doesn't mean that you can't have a plan against it. You can have a one-size-fits-all contingency plan that should consist of insurance, liquidity, and healthy business practices. Those are things that can help in any crisis, be it a meteor shower, a pandemic, or whatever you have to face. Secondly, communication is key. It's very important to stay close to your customers, to communicate frequently with them, and to be straightforward also, to be honest and open about what's going on in your business and how you're trying to help. People appreciate that, and if you're making efforts, they will appreciate it. They will appreciate even more. So that's very helpful. Another important point is the things that we have mentioned that Gurtam has done to help out in this tight situation. The first one is to lower operational costs. With the deactivation of units, we're allowing our partners to decrease unnecessary costs. On the revenue side, we have launched a distance tag to help our partners boost their sales. So we're helping lower costs, increase sales. And then finally, don't give away more than you need to. So if someone is deriving value from your service, you have a right to ask for payment in return. If someone is getting value out of you, then you should be able to ask for something in return. Don't feel that because there is a pandemic in the context, you are obliged to give away your services. That is not the way it works. So those would be the most important things. And of course, we're here with you. Gurtam is here for his partners, and we're ready to collaborate, to help, to talk, to listen to what you're going through, and to try to help you out with whatever specific situation you may be undergoing. So please talk to us. Talk to us and reach out to us, and we'll be happy to try to help you out.
Great. Thank you, Esteban, again for taking your time today and joining us and discussing COVID-19 reflections. I hope that you're staying safe. Thank you and goodbye.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.